Night afternoon at Utah Valley University turned into a national calamity when Charlie Kirk took the stage on September 10th, 2025. Surrounded by students, cameras, and anticipation, the conservative activist spoke. In less than a heartbeat, a single bullet pierced the air and struck him in the neck. He collapsed. Within hours, the name Tyler Robinson, age 22, emerged, a suspect. A young man whose DNA would be found on a towel wrapped around the rifle used in the attack, and on a screwdriver retrieved from a rooftop overlooking the courtyard. Evidence linked him directly to the scene, as FBI Director Kash Patel revealed. But that wasn't all. Investigators uncovered a shredded note, destroyed yet reconstructed through interviews, that confessed premeditation. A message where Robinson allegedly wrote, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I used it." Police say Robinson acted alone. Friends describe an obsession. Authorities now ask, was this a deranged ideology, a twisted political motive, or something darker still hidden in plain sight? The question now, how did a torn fragment of note and a fingerprint on a tool unravel a plot already underway? Tonight, the truth will be uncovered. Charlie Kirk was no stranger to the spotlight. At just 31 years old, he had built a reputation as one of America's most polarizing conservative voices. As the founder of Turning Point USA, he filled arenas, led rallies, and commanded an online following that numbered in the millions. To his supporters, he was a bold defender of free speech and traditional values. To his critics, he was a lightning rod for controversy, a figure who divided opinion as much as he attracted it. On September 10th, 2025, Kirk traveled to Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. The event was billed as a lecture on campus-free expression, part of his nationwide tour. Hundreds gathered in the school's Sorensen Center courtyard. Some came out of admiration, others out of curiosity, and a handful out of protest. For most, it was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon on campus. But minutes into his appearance, as Kirk leaned toward the microphone, a gunshot echoed through the crowd. Witnesses recall screams, students ducking behind chairs, and a frantic rush for cover. The shot struck Kirk in the neck. Security rushed the stage. Phones recorded the chaos. Within moments, the event had turned into a crime scene broadcast live across social media. Initial reports were conflicting. Some said the shooter had been subdued. Others claimed multiple attackers were involved. Rumors spread that it was politically motivated, while some suggested a personal vendetta. Confusion clouded the investigation in the hours that followed, leaving a community stunned and a nation searching for answers. To understand the weight of this tragedy, we must first understand who Charlie Kirk was. Born in 1993 in the suburbs of Chicago, Illinois, Kirk grew up in a middle-class family. He was raised by his father, Robert, an architect, and his mother, Mary, who worked as a counselor. Those who knew him early on described a sharp, ambitious teenager with a natural talent for public speaking. In high school, he delivered a speech at his church youth group that, according to friends, foreshadowed the fiery political voice he would later become. Kirk first gained national attention in 2012 when, at just 18 years old, he founded Turning Point USA. What began as a small student movement quickly grew into one of the largest conservative youth organizations in the country. Within a decade, Kirk was on television networks, hosting a daily radio show, and advising prominent political figures. He cultivated a loyal following while drawing criticism from opponents who believed his rhetoric fueled division. Yet, regardless of where one stood politically, there was no denying his influence. To many young conservatives, Charlie Kirk was a mentor figure, someone who gave them a voice on campuses where they felt silenced. To his family, he was a devoted son and brother, known privately for his sense of humor and relentless drive. His sudden death left an immediate void. At candlelight vigils across the country, supporters wept and prayed, clutching candles and homemade signs. Political allies delivered tributes. praising his commitment to his cause. Even those who often opposed him publicly admitted the shock of seeing such a prominent figure's life end so violently. The question lingered. How could a man who seemed untouchable on stage fall so quickly in a setting meant for dialogue and debate? But as investigators dug deeper, they found something at the scene that didn't add up. September 10th, 2025, began like any other day at Utah Valley University. Students filtered across the Orem campus, some carrying books, others rushing to class. By mid-afternoon, the Sorensen Center courtyard was alive with chatter. Chairs were lined in neat rows, cameras set up, and a stage readied for a special guest. Charlie Kirk was scheduled to speak at 2 p.m. as part of his national campus tour. Security teams moved into place. The crowd grew steadily, supporters, critics, curious onlookers. Some carried handmade posters, others carried smartphones already recording, ready to upload sound bites to social media. At 2:15 p.m., Kirk stepped onto the stage. Dressed sharply, carrying notes in his hand, he smiled briefly before approaching the microphone. Witnesses recall the moment vividly. A hush fell as he began his remarks. But just minutes in, at 2:19 p.m., a sharp crack split the air. It wasn't feedback from a speaker. It was a gunshot. In an instant, the courtyard erupted into chaos. Kirk collapsed, clutching his neck. Students screamed. Chairs overturned as the audience scrambled for cover. Some ran, others froze. Security agents rushed forward, dragging Kirk from the stage as frantic calls for help filled the air. Within moments, police units swarmed the scene. Sirens wailed and helicopters circled overhead. Officers combed nearby rooftops and alleyways, searching for the shooter. What they found shocked even seasoned investigators. Just blocks away, discarded near a rooftop access point, was a torn, crumpled note. Written hastily on lined paper, the message was chilling. Investigators pieced it together. I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I used it. The handwriting was rough, jagged, almost frantic, but there was more. Alongside the note lay items abandoned in haste. A towel wrapped around the weapon and a screwdriver with suspicious markings. Detectives logged every detail. Photographs were taken, evidence bagged. But one clue stood out above the rest. The handwriting was unusual, but it wasn't the ink that shocked detectives. It was the DNA hidden within. In the hours that followed the shooting, Utah Valley University transformed into a locked-down crime scene. Police cordoned off the courtyard, marking every piece of debris with fluorescent tags. Witnesses, many still shaking from shock, were separated into groups and questioned one by one. Dozens of cell phones were collected as digital evidence, each containing frantic videos of the chaos. Investigators scoured the campus security system, pulling footage from every angle. The rooftop access doors, parking structures, and even hallways inside the Sorensen Center. Still, the identity of the shooter was unclear. Some witnesses described a man in dark clothing slipping away. Others swore they saw more than one figure on the roof. The conflicting accounts fueled suspicion. Was this a lone attack, or the work of a coordinated group? Political tensions only heightened the uncertainty. Within minutes of the shooting, online forums lit up with competing theories. Some blamed political opponents, others pointed to foreign interference. Hashtags surged across X and TikTok, each post layering speculation over fact. The narrative was fractured and the truth seemed harder to pin down. Yet investigators had something more tangible than theories. The torn note and the items discarded near the rooftop. Forensic teams moved swiftly. In a sealed laboratory, technicians swabbed the paper, extracting trace biological material from its creases and edges. It was painstaking work. Every movement documented, every sample processed. Alongside it, the towel wrapped around the rifle and the screwdriver were tested. Under ultraviolet light, DNA markers glowed, revealing a partial profile that soon became a full genetic match. The results were staggering. Authorities now had a name connected directly to the evidence, a person whose DNA had been found both on the towel and on the note. When FBI Director Kash Patel later confirmed the findings publicly, reporters scrambled to broadcast the revelation. News outlets broke the story in real time, headlines flashing across every major network. The words DNA match carried the weight of proof. But inside the investigation room, the development created more questions than answers. Could the evidence have been planted? Was the match the true perpetrator or someone else entangled in the case? Detectives knew the suspect. He was already on their radar. The DNA matched someone already on the radar. But the match raised more questions than answers. The DNA test pointed investigators toward a name they already knew: Tyler Robinson. At just 27 years old, Tyler wasn't a stranger to local authorities. He had a history of erratic behavior, minor run-ins with the law, and a reputation in his neighborhood for outbursts that left some uneasy. His record included trespassing charges, disorderly conduct, and online posts that blurred the line between rant and manifesto.
Friends described him as intelligent but volatile, someone who could talk politics for hours, growing louder and more agitated as conversations spiraled into conspiracy. Others recalled how he often carried notebooks filled with cryptic messages and half-finished sketches. Some of those pages bore a chilling resemblance to the twisted handwriting found on the note at the crime scene. Investigators dug into his background. Tyler had grown up in a fractured home. School reports described him as withdrawn, prone to sudden anger but also fiercely defensive of his beliefs. In college, he briefly studied political science before dropping out, claiming the system was rigged. Online, he immersed himself in fringe forums, sometimes clashing with others under pseudonyms that law enforcement later traced back to him. But the timeline raised questions. Tyler had been seen near the campus days before the shooting, carrying a backpack. Yet on the morning of the attack, he insisted he was across town, helping a friend move furniture. That alibi crumbled when investigators checked. The friend said Tyler had indeed offered help, but never showed up. Then there was the note. Forensic psychologists analyzed its jagged lines, the uneven pressure, the obsessive repetition of certain words. To them, it reflected someone with instability, perhaps paranoia. And those traits mirrored what people said about Tyler. But still, there were inconsistencies. His digital footprint that morning was curiously light, as if scrubbed. Security cameras captured someone of his build near the rooftop stairwell, but the footage was grainy, unclear. Was it him or someone deliberately resembling him? The FBI presented their findings carefully, emphasizing that the DNA was a powerful link, but not conclusive proof of who pulled the trigger. Prosecutors debated whether to move forward, knowing defense attorneys would seize on the uncertainties. For the public, however, the revelation of a suspect gave the tragedy a face. Media trucks swarmed his quiet neighborhood. Neighbors whispered, and his blurred mugshot appeared on every broadcast. Was this truly the man who carried out the shooting, or simply someone caught in the web of planted evidence? But was the DNA evidence enough to tie them to the trigger, or was someone else involved? When the indictment came down, the case exploded into the national spotlight. Tyler Robinson stood accused of the shooting of Charlie Kirk, and the courtroom instantly became the stage for one of the most watched trials of the decade. Reporters lined the courthouse steps each morning, their cameras flashing as Tyler was escorted in under heavy guard. Inside, the tension was palpable. The prosecution built their case around the DNA. They argued that the torn piece of paper wasn't just a random note, it was a calling card. Expert witnesses testified that the DNA on the fibers matched Tyler's profile with near certainty. They presented surveillance footage placing someone of his height and build near the rooftop stairwell moments before the shots rang out. They leaned heavily on his past behavior, his obsession with politics, and his erratic online writings as evidence of motive and intent. The defense, however, struck back with precision. They argued that DNA on paper didn't prove Tyler pulled the trigger. It only proved he touched the note. And when. That, they said, was impossible to determine. They questioned the chain of custody, raising doubts about whether the evidence was contaminated. They hammered away at the shaky eyewitness accounts and the blurry security footage. And most of all, They painted Tyler as a scapegoat, a troubled man, but not a killer. Outside the courthouse, the trial divided the public. Supporters of Tyler gathered with signs reading, "DNA isn't guilt," demanding his release. They insisted the government was framing him to silence dissent. Meanwhile, supporters of Charlie Kirk filled the steps with flowers, candles, and banners calling for justice. Online, conspiracy theories spiraled, some claiming foreign interference, others insisting it was an inside job. After weeks of testimony, closing arguments brought the courtroom to silence. The jury listened as the prosecution reminded them of the DNA, the note, the inconsistencies in Tyler's alibi. The defense countered with one final plea: doubt, reasonable doubt. When the verdict was read, cameras captured every second. Tyler Robinson was found guilty of first-degree murder. Gasps echoed through the chamber as his family wept on one side and Charlie Kirk's supporters embraced on the other. The judge later handed down a life sentence without parole, calling the act a calculated assault on democracy. But even as the sentence was read, controversy burned hotter than ever. Commentators debated the fairness of the trial, activists claimed evidence had been withheld, and whispers of a larger conspiracy refused to die down. For many, the case didn't feel closed. It felt unfinished. And just when the case seemed to be over, new evidence surfaced. Just when the case seemed sealed forever, a startling revelation shook the foundation of everything investigators thought they knew. Months after the trial, forensic analysts re-examining the infamous note uncovered something previously overlooked. Hidden in the creases, buried deep within the fibers, was a second DNA profile. Not Tyler Robinson's, someone else's. The discovery left investigators stunned. The note, the very piece of evidence that secured Tyler's conviction, wasn't as straightforward as it first appeared. Who else had touched it? Who else had left their genetic fingerprint in the ink-stained fibers? Then came the testimony. A former acquaintance of Tyler stepped forward, claiming he had seen another man, a shadowy figure connected to fringe political groups, near the scene on the night of the shooting. His account was shaky, his credibility questionable, but it aligned with the mysterious second DNA. Theories erupted instantly. Was Tyler simply a pawn, a man whose name and past made him the perfect fall guy? Or was he working with others, part of a broader conspiracy designed to send a chilling message? Detectives, journalists, and online sleuths began piecing together timelines, connections, and strange coincidences. A lone wolf gunman, or a coordinated network that slipped through the cracks of justice? One truth became clear. The note, once thought to be the key to the case, was far more complicated than anyone imagined. And its hidden message, both written and biological, threatened to unravel everything decided in court. From the shocking gunfire that ended the life of Charlie Kirk, to the torn note that reshaped the investigation, this case has been marked by confusion, controversy, and unanswered questions. The DNA link that once seemed unshakable has since opened new doors of doubt, leaving both investigators and the public searching for clarity. For Kirk's supporters, his death was more than the loss of a man. It was the silencing of a voice that shaped a generation of political debate. For critics, it became a cautionary tale about division and the dangers of a charged public arena. And for the investigators tasked with seeking justice, it remains one of the most complex cases in recent memory, where every answer seemed to birth a new question. Today, the impact of that night extends far beyond the crime scene tape. It has left lasting scars on politics, on community trust, and on the families forced to live with uncertainty. Was justice truly served, or is the real story still waiting to be uncovered? What remains undeniable is the human cost. A young man, a son, a brother, gone. A family grieving, a movement fractured, and a nation still asking, who really pulled the trigger and why? The case of Charlie Kirk's fatal shooting may be closed on paper, but the questions surrounding it are anything but. Do you believe the suspect truly acted alone? Or was there more hidden behind that twisted note? Share your theory in the comments below. Your perspective might reveal a piece of the puzzle investigators missed. And if you want more daily true crime investigations like this, don't just watch from the shadows. Join the community. Subscribe now to Crime Scene 24/7, where every day we uncover stories that prove one thing: the truth never sleeps.